The two largest wildfires burning outside Los Angeles remain what officials call 0% contained. And one did stop spreading today, but conditions remained windy and dry. Today, President Biden promised more resources to combat the historic disaster.
The federal government will cover 100% of the cost for 180 days. This is going to pay for things like debris and hazard material removal, temporary shelters, first responders' salaries, and all necessary measures to protect life and property.
Destroyed homes number in the thousands. The total area burned now exceeding 11,000 hectares. Crews did beat back a new fire overnight in the hills above Hollywood Boulevard, and winds receded slightly, allowing air teams to resume work. But after months without rain, the land is parched, and weather alerts remain in effect until at least tomorrow evening. Now, several provinces, including Ontario, are offering help. Premier Doug Ford announcing today our province will be sending personnel and supplies to help battle the wildfires. Help that those affected say is desperately needed and fast. Tyreek Reed has more.
I'm doing well and keeping an eye on the news and watching and ready to leave if I need to.
Nick Clements says he's preparing for the worst as wildfires in California continue to rage on. The Toronto native who moved to LA only recently already had to evacuate the home he had been renting. He's now staying with friends, and the question of when or if he'll be able to return remains a question mark.
There are structures burning there, so it all depends on how soon these fires are extinguished and whether there's a safe path. I'm very curious to find out in what state the house is.
More than 130,000 people have had to flee their homes as the fires quickly push through neighborhoods. As of Thursday morning, 5 people have been killed. It's led to an all-hands-on-deck situation both locally and abroad. The Ontario government announcing today that it's ready to lend a hand.
We are sending 2 fire bombers over to California, 165 urban firefighters with all their equipment and all the requirements that are needed.
Hoses, pumps, chainsaws, and axes are also on the list. They're expected to touch down as soon as Friday.
This is what you do when you see what's happening on television. It's a tragedy, what's happening in California, and the poor frontline firefighters, they're absolutely exhausted, and they need some relief.
The help is badly needed and quickly. Sonia Collerat is a Victoria, BC native living in LA.
Hearing about everybody coming in from all over the place to help California is really wonderful because we need it. The fire not far from me is 0% contained, and it hasn't rained here. I can't remember the last time it rained, and it's supposed to be our rainy season. So until we get some rain, I think these are really going to just keep going for who knows how long.
This is an example of what I've been saying. You know, our closest friend and our closest ally needs help, and we're going to make sure we're going to be there for supporting them.
Ontario says it could increase the number of urban firefighters to over 300 if need be. Tyreek Reed, CBC News, Toronto.
And we've got the latest updates on the wildfires on our website. Just head to cbcnews.ca or download the CBC News app. And Premier Doug Ford is eyeing his next big transit project in the province, instructing Metrolinx today to look into the so-called missing link bypass. Lane Harrison explains.
As part of Ontario's ongoing fight against congestion, the province wants to reroute some train traffic in Ontario, with the Premier and Transportation Minister directing Metrolinx to explore the construction of a new rail bypass that would allow freight cars that don't need to go through Toronto to divert off rails shared by passenger trains.
What this really does is it unlocks thousands of more new trips for passengers every single year, and it allows us to deliver transit solutions to places in the past where we haven't had that opportunity.
The bypass would go from Milton to Brampton and would need to be done in consultation with Canadian Pacific Kansas City and Canadian National Rail.
Most of the track on which we operate passenger rails is owned by either CN, CP, or some other smaller entity. So we don't have passenger rail track, and that is the reason why we have experienced less growth in passenger or intercity rail. The reason being that the freight takes precedence, and therefore the passenger rail service has to be designed around the schedules for freight.
In response to the letter, CPKC cautioned any freight relocation would be complex and challenging. The province says the project would ensure freight capacity stays the same. Metrolinx is being asked to look at benefits to the Kitchener and Milton corridors, and that expert says if built, the bypass could make a difference.
We are solving two problems, housing affordability and sustainable mobility. So we can partially address congestion by providing people an opportunity to travel faster by rail rather than by car, and then having the people live in smaller towns where land prices are still much lower than Toronto can provide an affordable option for people to rent or own and still be able to commute within 45 minutes to an hour to Toronto.
This announcement comes after the Premier floated the idea of building a tunnel under the 401, but not everyone's convinced this government has the track record to deliver these projects.
We are 7 years in to a Ford Conservative government, and the Eglinton LRT still has not opened multiple projects. So, I'll believe it when I see it.
Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie says the bypass is something she's advocated for as Mississauga mayor. When this all might happen is unclear. One of Metrolinx's directions is to develop a timeline for any potential project. Lane Harrison, CBC News, Toronto.
The city is looking to hire more traffic agents. In the last 2 years, they have been out directing traffic at the city's busiest intersections. The city is saying this has helped to keep cars moving, and it plans to significantly increase the number of agents to further combat congestion. Ali Chiasson has those details.
Right now, there are 25 traffic agents that rotate through Toronto's busiest intersections. The city is looking to quadruple that, costing $3 million.
Today, I am pleased to announce that we're going to have 100 traffic agents across the city.
King and University is a fitting location for such an announcement. Cue the horns.
Same time last year, we saw a total gridlock right here in this intersection. TTC riders were stuck on the streetcar fuming while a car blocked the intersection and nothing was moving. Drivers were honking because cars were stopped illegally.
In the last 2 years, the city says traffic agents have had a 96% success rate stopping vehicles from blocking intersections. And when they're out along streetcar corridors, such as King Street, it moves 33% faster. The GM of Transportation Services says more of that.
The biggest changes that we've seen is we really need to be hiring on a regular cadence. It is a very physically demanding job. It's a very challenging job. The agents, as the mayor mentioned, are out in all weather.
Our traffic agents are out in the field. It's basically an everyday operation where they're outside. Traffic agents are working in inclement weather. They're working, rain or shine. Regardless of the weather system, the traffic agents are out and deployed at these locations.
It can be a tough job, but it's not thankless.
We get thumbs up, honks, everything you see. There's a lot of compliments on the public with the traffic agents out here.
Well, halfway through the intersection, and it causes a whole backup and everything. But yeah, these guys are doing a great job for sure.
Downtown commuters, where these agents are typically assigned, say it's been working for them and support the program being ramped up.
So it's morning, afternoon, evenings, even nighttime. It is very busy, extremely busy.
Have you noticed a difference that these officers have been making?
Yes, you know what? They do make a difference because the traffic seems to be flowing better.
I think it's gotten really bad. I think the policymakers that do design the traffic rules probably don't drive downtown. I don't think they account for the amount of bad drivers that there really are out there.
While traffic agents aren't the only solution for that, or traffic in general, it is what's being tabled in the budget next week. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
Toronto police are investigating a shooting last night in Scarborough where a tow truck driver was seriously injured. It's the latest incident of violence in the towing industry. Dale Monakdok has more.
Toronto police responded to this tow truck yard near Markham Road and Finch Avenue East Wednesday night around 10:30. They found a man in his 20s who had been shot and rushed him to hospital. But that's not where the man was shot. That happened along Shepherd Avenue at Shorting Road. The incident follows a violent 2024 in the towing industry. In Toronto, police say 62 of last year's 461 firearm discharges or shootings are believed to be connected to the tow truck industry, making up just over 13% of all incidents. The problem is province-wide, but is mostly centered on the GTA. In 2024, the OPP laid 518 tow-related charges. Toronto Police laid 507 charges. Other police agencies include Peel, which laid 234, Durham 69, and York Regional Police 47 tow-related charges.
I think it was a combination of many factors. Last year was high and concerning, and that's why we have proactive, collaborative, intelligence-led operations going on right now among all the police services in the GTA in Southern Ontario.
Measures to tackle the issue include legislation launched last year cracking down on bad actors in the industry, and the OPP's provincial auto theft and towing team working with other agencies and task forces. Though it makes up a small percentage of the tow truck community, the violence seen in the industry is being committed by organized crime.
When we talk about organized crime, they are involved in the towing industry, both members owning tow companies or have influence on towing companies, and then working with organized crime groups such as street gangs, traditional organized crime, outlaw motorcycle gangs.
As for Wednesday's shooting, police say the victim suffered serious but non-life-threatening injuries. There's no suspect description at this time. Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Toronto.
A man accused of stabbing his parents to death in 2022 was back in court today for a significant ruling on the case. Alpha Henry has been charged with 2 counts of second-degree murder, as well as the attempted murder of his brother. Our Greg Ross was in the courtroom for that ruling.
What made this hearing so interesting today is the fact that the justice made it clear early on that she would not be handing down a verdict of guilty or innocent. Her decision today was about whether or not the actus reus for the offenses that Henry is accused of were proven beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, why is that significant? Well, during closing arguments, the defense made it clear that if the justice decided that Henry is guilty, they would then file a motion for not criminally responsible based on mental illness. According to the case made by the Crown against Alpha Henry, back on September 19th of 2022, he killed his parents in their apartment. The Crown says that after weeks of being estranged from his family, Henry went to his parents' home on the morning of September 19th, despite the fact that he had not been invited. The Crown said that evidence showed Henry used a knife to stab his parents between 11:30 a.m. and 12:20 p.m. that day. Security footage showed him coming and going from the apartment in the days following. The Crown also claimed he used his mother's key fob to get in and out of the building, and that he also used her phone to procure the services of an escort on the night his parents were killed.
There's no gasoline.
He was seen purchasing gas, which the Crown alleges he doused his parents' bodies in after placing them in the bathtub at the apartment. The justice said the evidence against Henry was overwhelming. Henry's defense claimed that he did not commit the murders, that in fact it was his brother Daniel who killed his parents. Daniel, who lived with his parents in the apartment, worked as a flight attendant and had been on a trip to Japan. He returned home in the early morning of September 21st, 2022. The Crown claimed that Alpha Henry attacked Daniel with a knife when he walked through the door, but they say Daniel was able to overpower his brother and wrestle the knife away from him. Daniel then fled the apartment with the knife and called 911 from a nearby gas station. Alpha Henry told police that it was he who was attacked by his brother after Daniel stabbed his parents to death. In reference to those claims made by the defense, the justice said, "I completely reject his evidence." In the end, the justice determined that Henry did commit unlawfully the actus reus for second-degree murder, as well as the attempted murder of his brother. The next court date in this case has been set for January 17th. It's expected the defense will make their argument for not criminally responsible and ask the justice to allow them to have Henry examined by a forensic psychiatrist. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Welcome back. A man is dead after being struck on a 401 off-ramp in North York this morning. Police say the pedestrian was hit at the Keele Street off-ramp just before 7. He was rushed to hospital where he died a short time later. The driver of the vehicle remained on scene. The highway exit was closed for the rest of the morning, reopening early this afternoon. A fire broke out early this morning at a city shelter. Toronto Fire was called to 76 Church Street just after 5:15. When crews arrived, they found a garbage bin on fire behind the building. The blaze spread into the basement. Firefighters quickly evacuated the building as they worked to put out the fire. TTC buses were called in to provide temporary shelter to the displaced occupants. Thankfully, no one was hurt, and everyone staying at the shelter have since returned to the building. A new study by the Association of Municipalities of Ontario examines the problem of homelessness in the province and the toll that it takes on individuals, families, communities, and governments. The study is being called the most clear picture of homelessness in Ontario to date. Nicole Williams reports.
Living on the streets in Canada during the winter means being exposed to freezing temperatures, even when the consequences can be deadly.
I don't know what the answer is to why he died in the cold.
In the early hours of Monday morning, a man was found on the streets in medical distress in Ottawa in the frigid cold. First responders took him to hospital, where he was pronounced dead. This woman, who lives near where the man died, says she would often see him and say hello.
Wherever he was just a part of the community and a fixture here. And to not have him here is heartbreaking.
We are at a real tipping point. Without concrete action, it is only going to get worse.
On Thursday, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario released a report detailing just how many people are living on the streets in the province. According to the study, 80,000 people across Ontario were known to be homeless last year, more than half chronically homeless, and those numbers have grown by more than 25% since 2022.
Let's understand that this is the floor, not the ceiling of the issue.
Officials say shelters are well over capacity, and municipalities are doing their best to support those struggling despite limited resources. But what's needed is more funding.
The reality is you're either going to pay for it now or we're going to pay for it later. And what we need, our provincial and federal, on some level, partnership is to make focused investments into the gaps that we know that exist.
Advocates say homelessness is an issue being felt acutely across Canada, a problem that can seem overwhelming, but one that is solvable.
The reality is that there are a number of communities who have actually found solutions to homelessness and have effectively ended homelessness. And those are especially proof points around the world.
The government of Ontario says it's already committed $3 billion over the next 3 years to combat homelessness, but cities across the province say they need $11 billion more over the next 10 years for prevention and housing, and $2 billion on top of that for supportive services. Nicole Williams, CBC News, Ottawa.
3 different GTA school boards have confirmed that they've been affected by a data breach involving a U.S. company. Toronto, Peel, and Durham district school boards say they notified families of the incident yesterday. The boards say software company PowerSchool notified schools across North America of a data breach between December 22nd and the 28th. The TDSB says data stored with PowerSchool was accessed by an unauthorized user, but that information was deleted and no copies were posted online. The provincial NDP is calling on the Ford government to address what it is calling a rising school repair backlog.
This government is choosing not to invest and spend the money on our schools, on our kids, and building our public education system.
Stiles speaking there at Jarvis Collegiate Institute, one of Ontario's oldest schools built more than 200 years ago. The province's Financial Accountability Office said in a 2024 report that the backlog could balloon to $22 billion in the next 10 years. The NDP says investments in classrooms, science labs, kitchens, and better ventilation need to be a priority of the government. All right, Colette Kennedy joins me now with a look at the forecast. And Colette, let's start with south of the border because we're all watching what's going on in Los Angeles and these wildfires, which are many of them still out of control.
Yeah, and it was really, at least good to see those winds ease up a little bit through the day today. That helped out somewhat, and they could get some of those planes up to fight the fires. However, if we look ahead at what's coming in terms of just the wind forecast, a few things that they'll be watching very carefully. One is that we do have a few pockets where as we go into Friday, some of these winds are going to be kicking back up again with some of the gusts over 50 kilometers an hour. So obviously that is not good. But the other thing to note here is the directional change. So those red arrows by tomorrow later in the day flip to a southwesterly flow, which could push some of these areas, some of these fires like the Palisades fire, to the east and over closer to Santa Monica. So many things that they're, having to contend with there. For us, what we've been contending with, obviously, has been the cold. The daytime high today came up a little bit better than yesterday. We got to -4. Yesterday was -7 as a reminder, and -4 for Windsor as well, but still lots of cool readings, nearly -10 for Barrie. And just checking out those upper winds and that jet stream, still that deep trough in the southwestern U.S. That's part of that low that, along with the ridge, was really enhancing the Santa Anas, affecting the fires. But that same system, as it moves eastward and then kind of combines with some energy coming from the western prairies, comes together and brings us actually some snowfall as we go through the day. Now, tonight we don't worry about it through the overnight and early tomorrow as well. Still even some sunshine to start the day off, but then increasing cloudiness by afternoon. It's certainly late afternoon into southwestern Ontario. You're getting into these periods of snow, and then it moves by evening into the GTA as well and kind of takes over. So that's even through the night Friday, and then eases off by Saturday morning. Still some cloud cover and some flurries. And in terms of the amounts, we're looking at generalized about 4 to 5 centimeters in many cases. Now towards the snow belt, that could be enhanced a little bit and getting up there a little bit closer to perhaps that 8 to 10 centimeters in regions where you might actually want it. Temperatures do get a little bit milder, though, something that comes with the system moving in and that light snowfall. So by the weekend, we're actually going to find our temperature pushing back up, Kelda, getting above freezing.
I like it.
Woo-hoo.
I'll take it. Woo! Thanks, Colette. That's all the time we have tonight. Thanks for watching, and have a great night, everyone.